you listeners out there. And we are right here. This is Kirk
CC
and we're representing.
for realconnections.com.
And what we're doing is we're talking about love and life and relationship. And this is the main topic for today is going to be,
It's going to be about stereotypes and how they affect your relationship.
as you know, they sure as hell do.
Got that right. So let's jump right on in, and we're going to talk about some things like what are some of the things that people have they think are stereotypes. One of the biggest stereotypes I think is that females believe that men only think about sex.
You believe me? We have other things on our minds other than.
Really? Well, see, from what I see out in the world, especially on TV and commercials and in magazines, sex sells.
Yeah, but that's just an advertising ploy right there. Believe me, most of the time we're more concerned about getting our money, handling our teams, and doing our business. That's about it. You know, we do go ahead and check out a pretty face, but again, if you've seen some of the pretty faces my homeboy's been checking out, you wouldn't think sex sells at all.
Oh, so you're saying for some men that it's not all about looks.
That's the important part. I mean, a lot of guys, they go ahead and they do think about looks, but on the same sense, though, they're career minded. Is that they want to do something with themselves. They're motivated. They have a lot more than just sex on their mind. I mean, it's a fun thing to think about, but on the real sense, how do you grow? How do you develop into a relationship? What do you do from that point on? You can only have sex so many times right there. What do you do after the fact? And that's the important part.
Exactly. Like, how do you fill out the rest of your time? So, tell me, what are some of the things that guys think about women?
Well, that's the funny part right there because, hell, most of the time we know y'all as dirty as we are, but we just don't go ahead and say anything about it. That's the problem.
Now, wait a minute. Now, I have a point of contention because there is a field of thought out there that because females are female, that we can't be dogs like men. We can't run around and have just as many sexual partners as men do. Now, why do some men think that?
Well, that's the thing about it because, hey, if you messing around on me, I'm definitely going to be up here thinking about that. I mean, guys by nature are possessive, and they want to think that we have basically what you would call like a Mary Magdalene complex. We believe that every woman we get with is a virgin. Every woman we get is pure. We believe that in our brains.
Okay.
She might have 3 or 4 kids, but to us, we want her to be the one for us. And that's why we go ahead and have that kind of stereotypical attitude about women being hoes. But on the flip side, though, most of the time, and I'll be for real, we don't care. We kind of like a freak in the sheet, too. So it comes down to that point, though, where it's a balance. The problem, though, is that it goes back to, conflicts in relationship in the fact that we don't think those things all the time.
Well, yeah, true. You may not think them all the time, but there are some men out there that think about them a lot of the time because when you meet someone and they start talking about, well, how many men have you been with? The minute you go over 1 or 2, oh no, I can't be dealing with you. You automatically in the dirt. When he's been with 3, 4, and 5 himself, he's told lies to his buddy saying it's in the hundreds, but it really wasn't that many.
Well, that was the key to what you just said, too, was that there's a lot of lies. A lot of guys are not as promiscuous as you would think they are.
Uh-huh.
They do go ahead and they have issues with trying to get with more than one woman, or they'll go ahead and only have a few women they're involved with. That's the biggest thing about it, though. It's a misconception that works on both sides because a lot of guys, they will go ahead and pad the numbers. They're going to go ahead and add numbers to how many people they're involved with. They'll go ahead and talk about conquests they've never had, and it's just basically a part of male ego. I mean, let's be for real here. If you're going to go ahead and tell your homeboys and your buddies right there that you only slept with one woman throughout high school, you're going to be the laughing stock of the crew right there. And you might have to kind of embellish the numbers a couple of times. But on the same sense, though, when you deal with a woman, though, it can be intimidating to know that she has more experience than you do. When she talks about 2 or 3 or 4 guys that she's had in a month or 2.
Exactly. And then when you have that misconception that, ooh, that person's more experienced than me, that fear comes in there where I don't want to talk to you. And the same from the female point of view when she runs into somebody and he's talked about all the women he's been with, then it's just like, well, what are you doing with me then?
Mm-hmm.
If you've had so many, what happened in the past that now you're here with me, and what do I need to know about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole problem about when it comes down to, all these different types of stereotypes and misconceptions, is that it comes basically down to communication and talking to. Because you can think what you want, but you have to at least ask somebody to find out what the truth really is. And that's what it really comes down to. It comes down to the fact that, a lot of times, as I said before, yeah, we think about sex, but that's not the dominating focus for what a relationship is about. What does the other person have to bring to the table? And it doesn't have to be just about money, but it can be about support. It can be about compassion. It can be about just basically being able to communicate the way in which I feel. Because surprise, surprise, men actually are feeling. We do actually have other things on our minds, and it is pretty emotional for us right there. And we're just not going to let any woman get involved with that. Because, again, just like I said, when it comes down to sex and the fact that we have insecurities with it, we think that our partner has too much experience, we also have a kind of thing in which we draw back when we have too many things in which we talk to one woman. And we tell her too much about how we feel and what we feel. And then all of a sudden, now that comes back to another stereotype. Now you weak.
Exactly, because the way our society is set up, for a man to be strong, he can't show his emotions. And when you don't show your emotions, then a woman believes that you don't care. And a lot of women fail to see that men have emotions just as much as we do. They never went away. They've always been there. But we deal with them differently. We show them differently. And so instead of us talking to one another about it, boys from the time they're little, oh, don't cry, don't this, don't do that. You got to be a man. Suck it up. And so by the time you get into a relationship and I'm upset and I'm fussing at you and you just sitting there like a bump on a log, just, yeah, okay, whatever. And then I'm looking at you like, okay, you don't care. So guess what? I'm shutting down now. Or either I'm out the door.
And see, that comes back to the fact, especially on a little footnote about how we're trained as children. The biggest thing about why guys are constantly pushed on that level is mainly because of the fact that as a guy, going back to old values, being head of the household, taking care of the house, taking care of the family, those things you can't be over emotional for. If you can't pay the rent right there, you need to go ahead and get a job. You don't need to be crying about it. If you need to go ahead and get groceries in, you need to figure out how to make it work. And what happens is that it isn't the fact that emotions are something that you can't show. It's the fact that we got to handle business now. We got to do what needs to be done at that moment and not sit back there, be upset, whine, cry. And that's why, as a guy, that's why you always hear, boy, you better go ahead and get that lip back in and go ahead and go back out there. And that's what it's about. It's about us being focused on doing the things which we have to do. And that's why we do repress a lot of our emotions. It isn't the fact that we don't care. It's just the fact that there are bigger things that we have to handle. And that's what it really comes down to. It's the fact that there's a bigger picture. Because you don't want to sit in the house, your girl crying, your child crying, the dog crying right there, and all you can do right there is sit along with them crying. No, you need to, as they say, be a man, pull up your bootstraps right there, and get out and make something happen. And that's usually what it goes on to that. That's what it's really all about. It's about us going ahead, putting our emotions to the side to stay focused on getting the job done.
Okay, and then in getting the job done, there's no communication though. A lot of guys will go out and do things and go, okay, I'm going to handle this. I'm going to surprise her. And then in the meantime, all she knows, you just got up and left. You went to work and you left work at a certain time and then you ain't coming home. I don't know what you're doing. You could be out working a second job. But see, you forgot to tell me that. So I find that as an omission. And that omission to me is a lie. And so now I'm upset again because number one, you lied to me. You need to tell me what's going on so we can work together. And both end up at the finish gate at the same time.
And see, that's where it goes into one side asking the question that the other side answers. Is about going out there and saying, what's going on, but also about trust.
Right.
Because a lot of times, say, you working two jobs to go ahead and bring something in. Last thing you need is to have your woman going ahead and give you a hard time up here thinking you're messing around.
Exactly.
Because the only thing we mess around with is trying to get overtime. And no one wants to hear someone complaining about, oh, you out messing with Mary Sue, you out up here doing this, you out up here doing that. No, we don't have time for that. That's the whole thing about why. As I said, if you got a question, ask. And on the flip side, once you get a right answer, accept it at least for what it is. That's what respect is about.
Exactly. It's open communication, because too many times doors are left open, and too many times people will ask a question and they're going, I ain't answering that. You don't need to know that. Well, see, if you tell me I don't need to know that, my brain's going to start spinning 1,000 miles a minute, because it never stops. And I got to fill in that gap. I got to figure out, well, wait a minute. What is it that you're doing that I don't need to know? Because if I don't need to know, then you don't need to be doing it.
And see, that's a good thing, which I had a mom and a sister I grew up with, so I understand about that whole situation, about how women think on those levels. And for any guys out there listening, look, you need to be straight up with your girl. It ain't nothing personal. It ain't nothing about, who dominating the house or whatever. It's just the fact that it makes life a lot easier when you're talking straight up and not going ahead and talking around the situation, because believe me, what she said is true. They start winding up thinking about what's going on. Next thing you know, you went out there and you screwed 5 chicks right there. You've been up here spending the rent money. You've been up here not bringing in no groceries. You up here taking care of 2 or 3 other houses. But they would have every reason to think it's true, because you're deflecting a simple question instead of just giving a simple answer.
Exactly. And that's all it takes, is a simple answer. Hey, hon, I got a second job. I get off at a certain time. Just to keep her informed. It's not asking permission. It's not anybody controlling you, because, again, you have to have that mutual respect. But it's just letting her know what's going on. That, okay, when I get off, I'm going over here, just got to take care of some things. I'll be back home in 2 or 3 hours. So she's not sitting at home, obsessing, waiting for you, and doing nothing. It's just as important for a woman to have her own life, to have her own hobbies and her own interests. Otherwise, if she's just sitting at home doing nothing, all she's going to do is obsess.
And see, that's the whole thing that goes right back into stereotypes and mindsets, because what happens is that someone has to fill in the gap, and that's where the stereotypes come into. All the things in which women hear from television and movies and all the books and magazines out there, from all the other health gurus, fill their minds with different things. The same thing what fills our minds too, in which you're not communicating, you're only running with the stereotypes that you have in your head.
Exactly, because another big stereotype that's out there is that, well, hey, I'm in a committed relationship, but I'm not dead. And guess what? I can go out there and I can look at somebody else, or I may even want to play with somebody else. But hold up, wait a minute. Is that the communication and the understanding you had in the beginning of your relationship?
And that's the whole thing too. Look, guys, it's a good little fantasy that you want to go ahead and indulge yourself, but you know the truth in your heart. You ain't dealing with your chick up here walking out and messing with some other guy. And the same thing, she's not going to deal with you messing around with another woman. Now, if that's the type of relationship you have, that's one thing.
Exactly.
Do what you have to do. But you have to be true with yourself on that, and true with your partner on that. Because going ahead and saying, yeah, I can mess around with other people, but then when it actually comes down to when people get hurt.
Exactly.
And that's what it's really all about, is the fact that you just don't go ahead and think that the world's an open relationship, that when you feel like it, oh, wow, our relationship is not where it's supposed to be, so let's go ahead and take a break and see other people.
Exactly. And then after that break's over, the side piece is still coming at you, and wifey's looking at you, or girlfriend's looking at you like, wait a minute, who's this? When did they come into play? Do you still have feelings for them? Why are you still messing with them? Number one, I thought I was supposed to be number one, and if I'm supposed to be number one, nobody else is supposed to be my competition. I need you to tell them that in their face while I'm here, to reassure me, because that's why it's done. And if you can't reassure me in their face, in the flesh, in person, then guess what? You have a big problem with me.
And And that's it. And that's exactly straight what's up, because I'm telling you, too many times people go ahead and get in that mind because of the stereotypes. Oh yeah, people, they mess around when they get into those situations, or it's a fun thing to do because I can go ahead and check out the different fruit. Well, so sometimes the fruit's rotten, and you don't know what you're gonna be bringing home with you right there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing too. What you think is good for you, she might think it's good for herself too. And and come on, guys, you know what's up right here, because you possessive. You want that female to be yours, and you don't take too much about that whole letting her go out and play,
Mm-hmm.
and not think that whatever happens is not gonna come back and hit you.
Because while you're out there playing and neglecting her, I guarantee you somebody else has seen her, somebody else has approached her, and somebody else is going to give her the opportunity for her to go do the same thing you out doing.
And that's the whole thing about it too. And then also it comes down to another thing about different types of stereotypes is dealing with the fact that women can't have guy friends
Mm-hmm.
and have people which they relate with. The same thing which a lot of women think because of the sex that we can't have women friends. And
Right.
the thing about it is this: there is mutual friendship.
Yes.
There's always going to be mutual friendship. You can be for real. You have female friends out there in which you talk to, and it's not on that level. So the thing is, you got to be straight up in your communication. And again, it goes back to trust, about being able to go ahead and say, look, this is my friend. And on both sides, understanding that, look, as long as they don't find no panties in your pockets or any kind of indicators, that's on you.
Exactly, because the deal is if you're in a committed relationship and you have a friend, you can go to your significant other and you can even introduce them. This is my friend. We talk and whatever, and it's all out in the open. It's nothing hiding. I'm not getting a phone call and staring at you and turning my phone down and, or walking out the room to talk in the other room or outside the house to talk on the phone and making you look at me like, well, wait a minute, who was that? Well, why you gotta go in the other room to talk to him?
And believe me, he said, you look suspicious as hell walking out with that phone in your hand saying, I'll be back in a minute because I got to handle some business.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you talk to your mama, your sister, your brothers, your homeboys all in her face.
Exactly.
So that's the whole thing about it, is that you have to understand, and it goes right back to, as I say, when you deal with the stereotypes and believing those things to be true, this is what comes back and bites you. Just simple communication, just simply talking to somebody and letting them know how you feel about a situation or being informative about what's going on makes a huge difference. And when you don't go ahead and do that, that's when you have all the problems.
Oh, absolutely. Because if I come home and I'm going to tell you, like, look, I thought you were going to do such and such, but oh, yeah, something came up and I didn't get it done. Oh, okay, what came up?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, you can't answer me. You can't tell me. Now, if you have an agreement with each other, okay, I'm planning a surprise, and then my keyword's going to be like, okay, I'm playing Secret Santa. Okay. Then all I got to say is when that time period is over, like it's a birthday, you better have something for her.
You definitely better have something for her. Because you don't have something for her, she has something for you.
Exactly. Definitely. So it takes, talking to each other can be difficult. And when those conversations get heated, just say, look, we just need to take a break. But then later on, come back to it and work it out. Adults can talk to adults because we do it all the time without yelling, screaming, throwing stuff, and hitting. We do it all the time. So we can do it in our personal relationships as well as our friendly relationships. So I think it's important that everybody takes ownership and is responsible for for how they respond in certain situations.
That definitely is something which, on both sides, in which when it comes down to it, talking, communicating, speaking your mind, saying what's up. I mean, that's the one thing about relationship, though, is about that's why you're in it. So you can have somebody that you can actually feel comfortable talking to.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key to it. If you feel comfortable talking with that person, it won't be an issue and it won't be a problem. If you don't feel comfortable about that person, well, you might have to rethink your relationship.
Exactly. You might have to, watch them warning signs real early, like you can express your opinion even if they disagree, but you can still talk about it. If I have a different opinion from you, but that makes you so angry as to where you're going to yell at me or tell me that I'm not thinking right, that's a warning sign. You need to get away from that person.
Yeah, because that's the big thing about it too. Is this, and it works on the other side too with men. Is that if there is no communication, there's nothing going on as far as talking. If there's too much undercover stuff right there, you definitely need to take that hint right there. And unfortunately, move on, bro, because you're going to be stuck in a situation in which you're going to be constantly being played the fool. And I don't mean just about being played the fool. I'm talking about something going down and you stuck right in the middle of it right there.
And see, that's a situation you don't want to be in, whether you're male or female. Pay attention to what people say. If they tell you, oh, I'm never doing this or I'm never doing that, and it's something you want to do, take them at their word. Then, you're at a different place and I'm in a different place. It's okay. We just don't work together well. So you need to read the signs, and when that happens, just move on to somebody else.
Yeah, because that's the thing right there. Because what we really need to do is this. Basically, go ahead and say, we'll go over a recap real quick of the things in which is important about communication right there. And letting people know, look, it's about talking. It's about speaking to people. I mean, it's just that simple. It really comes down to it. Just going ahead and saying what's on your mind and what's going on. And being able to talk. Because, again, the stereotypes that are out there are just stereotypes. They don't represent who and what you are or what you're about. And you really need to take it for real and say, look, I'm not what she thinks I am. This is who I am, and speak up.
Exactly.
And say that.
You need to be able to tell somebody, look, this is what I like. This is what I want to do. This is where I want to go. And push that fear you're feeling about saying it down to the side, because you have to truly express who you are, because you need to find out if that other person's on the same page with you. And if they're on a different page, it's okay. It just means it doesn't work out. But you've got to at least be strong enough to voice your own opinion.
Because that's the biggest thing about it is this. In order to step beyond the stereotypes, you need to say something and do something about it. But also, most importantly, you need to stay on top of it too. Because all you're doing is perpetuating the same stereotype when you go ahead and you don't practice what you preach and you don't be true. I mean, the whole idea about you being in that relationship was that you wanted to make it real and wanted to make it work right there. And that's the biggest thing about it. If you want to keep it for real,
yes,
that's the most important part that you want to go ahead and keep up. And that's the whole thing that it comes down to.
Definitely. You want to make that for real connection in your life. And that's what we're here to help you do. So thank you for joining us.
And that's it right there. And we'll have plenty more for you later. All right. Peace.